What's up, everybody? Peter X, this O'Coffer here, doing another episode of Nothing But the Funk, trying to get this rolling. Today I'm gonna do a underappreciated album, and I don't know how. It's interesting how you run across things, and you're like, hmm. But today I'm doing War's album, "The World Is a Ghetto." Came out in 1972, November of that year. There's a lot of firsts, and it's a very interesting album where it falls in music history. It was the Billboard's number one album of the year for 1973. It was, yeah, their album of the year was their and was the best-selling album of the year in 1973. So it's fallen a really interesting, 73 is now remember, we had the 27 Club happened, by this time. I mean, 70, 71, 72. Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin are gone. And the other, big piece that dropped, I believe Led Zeppelin 4 drops in 71. So by 73, that juggernaut is gone. And this is just when the beginning of Stevie Wonder's great run with Inner Visions and Fulfilling This and Talking Book and Music of My Mind. So it's a really interesting place where this album falls. The other interesting thing is, back in the 60s, top 40 pop radio played everything, and this was still happening, obviously, by at this time, but certainly by 74, 75, even, uh, there's a really a split and a uh, uh, segregation of music styles on radio again. Um, I'm pretty sure this is the only funk album ever hit number one. Um, you know, P Funk, Parliament and Funkadelic, that stuff was relegated to the black charts, even though they have a pretty loyal white following. Rick James is the same. Um, James Brown, I mean, I got you and I feel good. No, okay. But I got you and I can't remember, his other 64 hit. You mean, yeah, those climbed the pop charts, but James did not get, hit hard in the pop charts again until Living in America, I believe was 86. Papa's a Brand New Bag. That was the other one with I Feel Good that James did well in the pop charts. But James was relegated to the black charts as well. Throughout the late 60s and early 70s. Well, throughout the whole 70s. So this is a unique album that sits there, and that's kind of why I wanted to cover it. So 6 songs on this album, 44 minutes. Um, yeah, so what would I would say? Uh, War is a funkier version of Santana. I mean, you still got the rock elements. I mean, Eric Burden, out of the Animals started War, and then he left, and War did their thing. Um, so there's a lot of that Latin percussion. So it's a very interesting. War has a very interesting catalog. That is, funk meets Latin, and of course, I mean, we still see that reggaeton and hip hop, and disco and reggaeton and you know, the meeting of the minds, so to speak, it still happens today. Um, so this album still clocks in at 444 and Rolling Stone's top 500 albums of all time. So I mean, um, it's still very well respected. Whenever I think about this album, though, I fell in love with this album back, in the '80s when I first ran across it. But there was a time, even into the, from the late 80s, the 90s, and the early 2000s, if you went to a black picnic, there's that old head uncle. At some point, he was putting on War, the world is a ghetto, and y'all were gonna listen to him. At the black picnic, there's always music in the background. So even if it's the '80s and Ice T or Ice Cube or banging, that old uncle's black. It's my turn now, and he's gonna put the world, War, the world is a ghetto on. So that's that old school uncle. That's kind of when I think of this album. I think of that old school uncle. So this album starts, big. Number two on the Billboard pop charts, this, Cisco Kid. And this clocks in at 4 minutes and 26 seconds. Um, Cisco was a Mexican American character in films, TV, and radio shows. Going back, I mean, I think in the 50s. So you had the Lone Ranger. Cisco Kid was a friend of mine, so he was, Mexican American, and for young black folks, young black kids, you weren't on, black faces weren't around, so you were drawn to the brownest character there, and that just happened to be Cisco. Um, so that's the first song. Only 6 songs on here, but this is some classic stuff. Where You're At, that's the second song on there, and it's pretty decent. One of my favorites on this is the third song, and back in the album days, 6 songs, 3 songs each side. So this is song 3, be the last song on the first side. City Country City is an instrumental. Two very distinctive styles. So the song toggles back and forth from a jazzy kind of mellow, sunny side to this really, you know, not sinister, but a very banging type of funk. And this clocks in at 13 minutes and 23 seconds. One of the things, beauties of this album is, there's a lot of long songs in there, but you needed them, and they knew, War knew how to work long songs and make it work. So yeah, that's a classic. Song 4, song 1, side 2, Four Cornered Room, 8 minutes and 35 seconds. So you got funk, blues, and psychedelic stuff going on here. This is a good, good, good song. A man is struggling with his love for a woman. There's no guitar, but you still have that psychedelic aspect to it. Uh, but they use the background vocals very well in this song, and it sets the mood. It builds the intensity, builds it up, takes it down off of the background vocals. So yeah, um, again, not a hit. City Country City song 3, not a hit, but Four Cornered Room song number 4, still banging. And that's when you have classic albums like this, you make that Rolling Stone Top 500. Yeah, the A-listers get noticed, on these albums, but it's the B and the C songs, those second and third level songs that really, really bring the meat and really make these songs classic. And really, in some ways, since, City Country City is an instrumental, that's kind of one of those third level songs, but it's so well done. Um, and for Corner Room, I would consider a second level song, but, 8:35 probably too long to be a single even back in the day, but hey, this song is slamming. Song 5, the title song, Funk and Blues, 10 minutes 16 seconds. Talk about setting the mood. The world is a ghetto. Hey, still relevant today. This hit number 7 in the Billboard Top 100. So they had 2 top 10 songs in this album. And so really sits very interestingly, into the into the funk tradition because we know about Public Enemy and Ice Cube and the politics, from the 90s, and we know about Kendrick Lamar getting political. This song, and this album has a really political edge to it. And I would call this, the post civil rights view on racism, because this is 72 going into 73. And, the bills have been passed. Uh, Malcolm X and Dr. King have been assassinated. For the most part, the Black Panther Party has been dismantled. I mean, they're still, you know, Huey and Oakland hang on, throughout much of the 70s. I'm not sure what goes on with the New York chapter. The Chicago chapter, didn't make it very far in the 70s. I don't think the LA chapter made it very far in the 70s. So, Snick is gone by now. Snick started with actually Mayor Marion Barry, who was mayor of D.C., and then you had Julian Bond and the great John Lewis, but then Stokely Carmichael and H. Rap Brown take over. But by this time, and they sort of, at least in rhetoric, rivaled the Black Panther Party in the late '60s. But by this time, uh, SNCC no longer SNCC stands for Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. By the time Stokely Carmichael and who later changed his name to Kwame Ture and H. Rap Brown, had SNCC, and now it's the Student Nationalism Coordinating Committee. So this song really kind of sits the world as a ghetto, and this kind of like surveying the world, post civil rights. This, Ball of Confusion by the Temptations kind of sits there too. They're both roughly coming out at the same time, and they're both kind of doing, similar things. So yeah, and the last song is a Beatles in the Bog, a funk blues song, and it's pretty good. So I mean, you got 6 songs on this album. 4 of them are just bangers. And the world is a ghetto. I think I mentioned this rolls in at 10 minutes and 16 seconds. But talk about setting the mood, and you know, song sets the mood so well you don't even have to, the lyrics of this are good, but you don't even have to have great lyrics because the mood is set so well. And then you have a great title on top of it, The World is a Ghetto. Look, this song is still relevant today. It still is. So yeah, this is a short one, but I like, shining the light on hidden gems. A lot of the stuff that I do, particularly with older music, is looking towards the future, because my theory is great music doesn't, great genres don't uh, die. They're rediscovered. And as I've shown, just posted up, the EDM techno and house, and, that they go back to funk and disco. So genres never really die. And, being that music is essentially free for everybody, this album ain't dying. I mean, people are going to rediscover it, and it's going to get, it'll, I don't know, I forget how many streams it has now, but, this, good music will survive and will live on. So anyway, thanks for coming through. I got 5 albums of my own, all in streaming services, also here pegged on the channel. And I got 2 science fiction fantasy novels on Amazon, and also in development that science fiction and fantasy as well. So thank you for coming through, and I will see you next episode.